Good morning, good afternoon, happy Sunday, Sunday, June the 5th, a new month, halfway through 2022. All right, I am going to give it a few minutes to see if I have some folks join. And if not, I am going to cover the few things I have on my list to talk about this morning. And that's going to do it. All right. All right. Good morning. I am going to wait just a few more minutes. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Good afternoon. All right. I am going to get started. Good morning from California. Good afternoon from North Carolina. Good afternoon. I'm going to kick it off and get started, and then we can hopefully, good day, Sandra, have some others join. Oh, thank you, Tanya. I appreciate that. This is the lip that bothers people, so I always end up having a lot of comments that people hate this lip, and I love it. And I don't care. So you know how that goes. But thank you. I appreciate it. Good morning. Good afternoon. I am going to thank you all for being here with me. I am going to kick it off. Good afternoon. My name is Jewel Pearson, and this is Miss Bohemian Soul TV. This is the Creating Home, a Tiny House series, and this segment is I'm sorry, I'm getting ready to mess it all up. This is the What's Your Question? This is the segment where I answer frequently asked tiny house questions. And just to kind of introduce myself, I like to think I built a kind of fancy tiny house in 2015. And since that time, I have shared my journey to hopefully inspire others who are interested in the movement. I do offer coaching, consultations, and workshops to help others in their tiny house journey. And I serve up a lot of representation in the movement along the way. It is my intent to build figurative and literal community that is inclusive and accessible. And if you find this information in this video helpful, I would ask that you like it, that you share it, that you subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications so that you'll know when content is available. Again, this is part two of the series. The other part of the series is the conversations, or are the conversations on intimate spaces, where I interview people who are in and around the tiny house movement and share their journeys and their stories, and weave information in about their tiny houses, because I believe it's so much bigger than just the tiny house. So thank you all for being here with me this morning, this afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you all so much for being here. I am kind of doing a freestyle this morning or afternoon. I only have a few questions that I am speaking to, and then hopefully there will be some questions that you all have in the audience, and we can kind of get those answered and use the time wisely. So I have had 3 questions that I am addressing, and my AirPod always falls out, which is why I hate them. Okay, so one of the questions that I always get, and I am going to share the screen. Hi, Virginia. Virginia in the live. Thank you for being here, Sheila. So one of the questions I always get is, how do you access that second loft? So the loft up on the up above my bathroom that I use as a right now it's kind of a little nook that has plants, and um, it's just kind of a cool resting space. Um, and everybody wants to know, how do I get to that loft? And so, if you will look at this picture and kind of follow me along, um, right in front of the door to get to that loft, if you'll look behind the couch, there's some fabric that is hanging there on the wall, and that fabric is hanging on a ladder. There are two, um, I don't know if you call them prongs, whatever you would call them, on the wall. And then if you look right at the top of the loft, there's another right there. And so to get to that loft, I actually step on my couch. I step on the arm of my couch, and I climb that ladder. I move the fabric. I climb that ladder and holding on up top, and then I can access that loft. And I do that every week or so to water my plants. You see, I've got some plants up there, and they are doing very well. So clearly, I do get up there. Um, and that is how I access that loft. Now, if someone buys my plans or builds to my design and they're going to use the second loft frequently, they could, of course, over where I have the decor, my mirrors over on the right-hand side, they could add a ladder, they could add stairs in that area, just like I have stairs on the other side. They could be added right here. In fact, that was done for someone who built to my plans. And so, or there oftentimes you'll see the ladder built on a barn door where I have my mirror as my door. People use a barn door with a ladder. So you could use that to access that loft, add some steps, add a ladder. For me, I wasn't planning to use that loft frequently. So because clearly in a tiny house, you are trying to take advantage of all of your space wisely, I didn't need to add the ladder or the stairs because I didn't intend to access that loft frequently. So I preferred to use it. You see where I've got my couch all the way to that space, and then I've got decor in the other corner. So again, that is how I access that loft. It is not difficult to do. I am, I'm not a spring chicken, and it works very easily for me. And that is how I access that loft. Okay, what is another question that I have on my list? Let's see. The other question I have is on my list is about tiny house insurance, and I'm pretty sure I covered that at some point in the what's your question. I think in episode 1 I might have covered that, but tiny house insurance. So the standard insurance company is not going to insure a tiny house. Your regular home insurance companies aren't going to insure a tiny house. So there are several things that can be done around insurance. So the first thing is, because you're building the tiny house on a trailer, that trailer has a VIN number, just like a car has a VIN number. So you are registering that trailer with the DMV, and you get a tag for that trailer so that it can be used on the road. So you can insure the trailer just like you would insure a car. You can insure the trailer as a trailer with a load. Now, if something were to happen, and something happened, of course, you're building your house on that trailer. If something were to happen and you needed to use that insurance, I think it's very unlikely that the insurance company would pay out very much. Even if you've paid it for years, that is just the nature of insurance. They will most likely, I'm thinking, find a way to get out of paying it, just because they'll likely say, we weren't insuring a tiny house, we were insuring that trailer. And maybe they just reimburse you for the trailer or something like that. But I doubt very seriously they would come up with the entire cost of what you use to build your house. So that is standard insurance, but that insurance is just for the trailer because you have a VIN number. There are a couple of tiny house insurance companies that I do know specifically insure tiny houses. Their premiums are a little bit more than what I know standard home insurance to be, but it is an option, and I will leave that information in the description. The two companies that I am aware of, I'll leave that information in the description for those who are interested. So those are two companies. And then the other thing that I know people have done, and kind of it was the thought going into the tiny house movement when there weren't the two companies that I'm aware of. The thought at that time was, you're building your house, you're saving money because you don't have a mortgage, you aren't kind of in that same rat race. So the thought was, save your money. Should something happen, then you would be able to do whatever. You'd have the money and be able to handle the repairs, whatever it was that happened to your house. You'd have it out of your savings because you're no longer paying for a mortgage. So those are the options that I am aware of for tiny house insurance. Again, insuring your trailer because it does have a VIN number. It's going to be on the road. And then the two companies that I'm going to drop in the description, and then, kind of just saving your money so that you can then take care of whatever comes up. All right. Those are two questions that I've had. And then the final question that I have on my list to talk about is a question that I had where someone inboxed me to ask me, since I have built the new spaces around my tiny house, what my plan is for maintaining the maintenance for the tires on the mobile part of it, the original tiny house, because the tires are covered. So a couple of things. So I also, in addition to the sunroom space and the porch that are built on the side and the front of the tiny house, I also have skirting, which is I have foam board insulation and plywood that I put around the bottom, the exterior of my trailer. That is for winterization. And I think I've talked about that as well in one of the episodes, but maybe I'll talk about that winterization as one of the frequently asked questions series. But because the tiny house isn't built on a foundation, in places where you have cold weather, you want to winterize your tiny house so that you are trying to keep as much heat underneath your house for cold weather, so your pipes and things aren't freezing. Again, I think it's about a 2-inch foam board around the exterior, and then I have plywood in front of that I've painted so that it kind of blends in with the house. It has been over time, again, 7 years in the game. My first year, I just used a tarp and kind of taped it around the exterior of the house. A couple of times my pipes have frozen and with the tarp, and then even one winter with the plywood and the foam board insulation, and just putting a heater underneath the house would thaw the pipes out. And that year was like really a bad winter. Even houses were having frozen pipes. Over time, I have learned to kind of do it so not when I did the tarp, like around October, I did the tarp and taped it, and then once spring hit, I took it off because it was hideous. I've learned since that time to kind of make it an all year round solution, which is why I do the foam board and the plywood so that I don't have to mess with it all the time. Hey there. And so and I leave, so there's an open, like where I need to access maybe my water or whatever. I do leave a opening, leave a space that is accessible, being able to get when I need to get underneath my home. So with all of that, the question was, how do I plan? What is my plan for maintaining my tires? So, a couple of things. I don't intend to move my house anymore. Maintaining your tires and your axles, that's important. If you're moving your house, you need to make sure your tires, you aren't so the maintenance for tires and your axles, you have to at some point grease the axles, and don't ask me how to do it. I hire somebody to do that. But I also know not to place my house fully on my tires, so that you don't end up with the connection from your tires to the ground and staying in place. You don't want to end up with tire rot. So I blocked my house, and I know I've talked about this. So I blocked my house with cinder blocks, one for added stability, as well as to lift it some, so that my house is not completely on my tires, so that I can rotate the tires, to ensure that I don't end up with tire rot when I'm going to be moving my house. The other thing that you want to do is cover your tires. And I'm sure you've seen like the tire covers for RVs. Those will fit on a tiny house trailer, on your axles on the tiny house trailer. Because what will happen is, if you are like in direct heat and sun, that will end up, your tires will end up disintegrating because of the direct heat in the sun. They're rubber, so over time they're going to be affected by heat and sun if you don't protect them. So that's the maintenance that you need to do to your tires and your axles if you intend to move your house. For me, I don't intend to move my house anymore, so that really isn't on my priority list. And I could access the front tires if someone went up underneath the house. There's enough space to go up underneath there. I'm not going underneath there. But that could be done on the front, but by going up underneath the trailer. And then on the back, I can get if I open up the plywood, and remove the foam board and the plywood, I can then access the tires and do maintenance there. But again, that's really not high on my priority list at this point, because I don't intend to move the house. And so answering that question, and then also kind of touching on what the maintenance is that's required for tiny house tires and axles, if anyone has questions around that. Okay, I think how to get to the loft, under trailer, tire maintenance, and insurance. So I have answered the questions that I had on my list to answer. And so now I am going to check to see if there are any questions in the chat that I can answer. So let me look in the chat and see. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. Good afternoon. Hello, Charm City. Oh, someone's at a college graduation and tuning in. Happy graduation to your college graduate, and thank you so much for being here. Okay, Sandra, good morning. Thank you for being here. Good afternoon. Do you know anyone who has an all-electric house? I have an all-electric house. I don't, at this time, have any other means of powering my house other than electric. It is my hope and intent at some point to add another source in my I don't know, utility box, whatever it is, power box, whatever you call it, on the side of the house where the power comes in. I have options within there to expand out for solar or for a generator. I just haven't done that yet, but it is, and I'm really interested in Elon Musk has a home battery that is I'm really interested in. I know a couple of tiny houses that have used that battery to power their house, and so that's kind of my interest. But yes, I have an all electric house at this time. So, and a lot of people do. Um, it's not the worst thing in the world. Like, you know, going to an RV park, most times you're going to have access to electric. It would just be so thinking about my house runs kind of off of 100 amps, and when it was built, it was running off of 50 amps. And then I added my mini split system after the house had been built, and I didn't really consult with my electrician, and it needed. I don't know if it could have been avoided in the beginning if I had added it. I can't pretend to act like I know about electricity, but it needed a 50 amp. Is it my mini split? Something. Either it's my mini split or my electric on demand water heater. One of those needed a 50 amp all by itself. And I don't remember which one it is. And most RV parks offer 50 amp, 30 or 50 amps. But I was still able to, there at the RV park, get the support by working with my electrician in the RV park to get the support that I needed for my tiny house. So the only thing I would say is to be cautious, not to require the standard, depending on where you're going to go, the standard is going to be either 30 or 50 amps. So just making sure that you are planning it out so that your house won't be an anomaly where you'll have challenges going to different locations because you require more support than is normal. All right, let me see what else I see in the chat. All right, lovely gardens. I am a single 48-year-old African American woman. I look exactly like you, and I have a tiny house, and I need your help so much. Please, what do I need to do to speak with you one-on-one? Where have you been, lovely gardens? I always talk about that. I even talked about that in my introduction. So in the description of this video, once it is posted, you will see ways to connect with me. I offer consultations, and I am very, very happy to help you in a consultation. So look in the description. My website, the bohemianbrand.com. But in the description, to make it easier, you will find all of that information to connect with me one-on-one. Thank you very much, and I look forward to connecting with you. All right, Sheila is asking, are there any states that do not allow tiny houses? For the most part, it's all of the states. And I've talked about this in where can I place my tiny house, which I think is episode 3 of What's Your Question? I also talk about it in luxury living in a tiny house. So the permission is at the city and county level versus the state level. So you're going to have to check at the city and county level for permissions. But for the most part, tiny houses on wheels, I'm talking about, are not allowed in a lot of cities and counties. They may flat out say no, or they may also not have any kind of rules around tiny houses because they've not dealt with them. So it, again, is going to vary by city and county. I always talk about California because there are a lot of states, a lot of cities within California. I'm glad I recovered on that one before I went back and watched and realized I messed that one up. There are a lot of cities within California that do allow tiny houses on wheels. And so they're kind of leading the pack right now and doing a really good job to address their affordable housing crisis and allowing tiny houses on wheels as accessory dwelling units in their backyards, in people's backyards. And it doesn't have to be the owner of that home that has the accessory dwelling unit. But refer back to maybe it's episode 3 of What's Your Question, where I talk about placement for tiny houses, and I talk about that in depth. And I will add a link to that video in the description as well. All right. From the professional tiny home builders, could you name a few that stand out as good quality builders to you? Understood that there can be many components in deciding depending on needs, etc. Why don't I? So thank you for that question. I know I've shared some of the builders that I am familiar with. I don't want to name some and then miss some and then fall out with some folks because I didn't name their companies. But what I will do is in the description list the builders that I'm familiar with and kind of have some experiences with working with them or knowing them. So I will list that information. All right, so we got us a troll here. All right, let me kick them out real quick. All right, if a state allows tiny homes, here's the next question. If a state allows tiny homes, am I right in understanding that local zoning or HOAs can still block you? Okay, so again, this kind of goes back to the question I just answered. So again, it is at the city and county level. And so local zoning, local code is going to determine whether they're going to allow tiny houses on wheels. And yes, the HOA, your HOA, I can't think of a neighborhood with an HOA that is going to allow a tiny house on wheels. Maybe foundation as an accessory dwelling unit, but you would have to obviously get permission and talk to them. But I don't know. They have so many rules. I can't imagine that an HOA would allow a tiny house on wheels. All right. If you see this, I was looking to build a tiny house along the East Coast. How do you prepare for storms, hurricanes? So I've also talked about this in one of my frequently asked, what's your question? And I talked about the tie down plan for a tiny house. So depending on when I go into a location, I tie my house down. And tying down your house is very similar to a process that mobile homes go through, where you are, and mobile homes actually have the tool, for lack of a better word, where it is steel, something that goes in the ground. This connector connects to the thing that goes into the ground, and these aren't official terms, but it connects to this thing that you concrete in the ground, then you attach it to your house. I do that to my house. My house is 28 feet, so I do that on the 4 corners, and then I also do it kind of in the middle around near the axle. And I do that wherever I go because to me it just makes sense, in addition to building your tiny house to code as much as you can. So that is one of the things that is helpful for storms and strong wind. My house, I think I've experienced 60-mile-an-hour winds. I'm thinking that's what that was. My house doesn't bounce around or move or anything like that. Would be a deal breaker for me if my house bounced around. Like that would just be terrifying. So my house does not do that. It is kind of solid. It's obviously bigger. Now I've got the sunroom space that is on foundation, so I'm sure that's helping to tether it as well. But that's one of the things that I do to just for safety, even outside of thinking about storms. That obviously is going to help with storms. But if it is, a major storm, one of those higher categories, or tornado, which is always scary for me, it's the luck of the draw, kind of like mobile homes, even conventional houses on foundation aren't safe in some of those storms. So outside of the tying down of your house, and then, just using common sense, there was I think it was 2018 or so, we were supposedly going to have a major hurricane. And, all of these storms are scary. Hurricanes I can kind of deal with because at least you have some preparation in advance. Tornadoes happen, out of the blue in the night, all of that time, all of those types of things. And those are the things that really scare me. But we were supposed to get the brunt of this hurricane. And I was actually looking into moving my house because that is the benefit of a tiny house, depending on your size, that you can actually, with a hurricane, if you've got advance notice, move out of the eye of that storm, which is one of the reasons that I think for like cities like New Orleans and things like that, I think it would be a great idea as long as you've got a plan, where you've got the finances to move your home and you've got a location to move your home to get out of the eye of the storm. But this hurricane was coming, getting back to my story. And I was looking at, there's a location here where, indoor storage for RVs. And I was investigating moving my home into this indoor storage to kind of weather the storm. But I think if I'm not mistaken, I'm thinking the indoor storage was like $400 or $500 a night. And that was way out of my budget, plus not knowing how long my home would have to be there. Um, there were so many factors to have to consider versus paying just $400 or $500 a night. Would this building be impacted by the hurricane? And then I would still, would have paid them money and still took an L on my house. And so at the end of it, I just decided that I couldn't do it because I couldn't afford it. And at that point, hurricane, the other things with hurricanes is, the path changed and we completely missed the brunt of the hurricane, and just got some strong winds and my house was fine. So a lot of it is, common sense, kind of thinking along the same lines of a mobile home, what safety measures they go through, and then, the challenges that they face. All right. Um, Here's a question. What about propane when there's no sun? So the way solar works, is that those batteries are storing power. So if there's no sun, unless it's just consistently no sun, you should still, from the times that there is sun, your battery bank, and again, I'm not a professional, but I know there's some storage of power. So even if the sun isn't out bright with solar, you still should have power for your home because you're storing that power. Again, unless it's just consistently not storing or building power because you're consistently without sun, then that would be a different challenge. But absolutely, propane. There are a lot of tiny houses that are powered by propane. I didn't do, for me, propane. Propane, natural gas. Those things kind of scare me. So I haven't gone in that direction, but absolutely a lot of tiny house people are using propane to power their houses and for on-demand heaters, standard heat, all of that. All right. Do you pay a monthly fee for parking your tiny house? Absolutely. So I consider it tiny house parking. So, and it's one of the things I've also talked about this in one of the videos. One of the things that if you're going to be on someone else's property in your rental agreement, because I encourage you to have a rental agreement, in your rental agreement, you want to call out that you are paying for parking at that location. You are not, you own your home and you're paying for parking at that location. But yes, there's a fee um, that you should negotiate, that you'll negotiate with that person. And yes, thank you, Sandra. Thank you so much. I never advertise super chats for myself, so I appreciate you. Look, today, since Sandra kicks it off, and Sandra, I appreciate you. You always are generous with the information that's being shared, and I appreciate you. So that's my standard um, blurb that I say: share love and appreciation with today's guest. I'm today's guest. So if you feel inclined to send some super chats, or if you want to cash at me, I am going to take it. And I thank you very much. Thank you, Sandra, for always being generous and thoughtful. Okay, what keeps you inspired and motivated? I probably will say that I'm not all the time because this gets tiring. It gets tiring, like when you're trying to share information and in a session like this, and then you go and check the comments, and people want to talk about your lipstick negatively, or because your head is bald, and apparently people have problems with that, or there's so many comments that people make that can be frustrating. But I then have to remember that, one, I don't really care. I do this, and I the way I move in the world and in life is the way that makes me happy, and I try to really drown out the noise. But I'm human, so sometimes it's going to impact me. The inspiration and the motivation is because I really, really believe in tiny houses as an opportunity for people. Um, I see it as an opportunity, especially for Black and Brown communities. And again, before anybody goes there, I constantly share that the tiny house movement is 95 or 97% white. So white people covered. The thing that I get passionate about is ensuring that our communities see this as a viable option for us, because I see how our communities suffer from gentrification, predatory lending, how redlining has impacted all of our communities. Housing is really the basis of so much of poverty and crime. And poor education starts with housing, because funding for housing is what drives funding for healthcare, et cetera, all of that. So housing is kind of the foundation of that. And because society is founded on racism, we are not where we need to be. Year after year, we're not in the home, we're not our home ownership. We're at the bottom of the list. And so I really feel like tiny houses offer opportunities for affordable housing, for wealth building, for freedom, for happiness, for building your own lifestyle, having an opportunity to spend more time with your family. And I feel like it is something that tiny houses I can talk about in my sleep. And it is something that I'm so passionate about that I really want to share this information with others, and I feel like it is almost a responsibility, if that makes any sense. So that is what, and the people who get it and who show up on Sundays and share that, the something I said or watching me has motivated them, or until they saw me, they didn't feel like this movement was for them. That is part of it. And again, people showing up and participating, and I realize that I have an opportunity to help others, and that is what keeps me inspired and motivated. So thank you for that question. Absolutely, you're very welcome. um okay, with the purchase of your plans, can I be allowed to make some changes? So yes, purchasing my plan. So I want to be clear, and I will leave the information for how to purchase my tiny house plans in the description as well. I should have been making some notes to make sure I get all of this. Um, Purchasing my plans. My plans are just for the tiny house on wheels. I have not updated my plans to include the sunroom space, my porch. I don't intend to do that. That's kind of just been off the dome of how I've wanted to expand my space. So my plans are just for the tiny house. However, you and your general contractor, your architect, can make adjustments to the plans as you need to. Absolutely. The plans can be used kind of as the catalyst to get you started, and then you go from there. So absolutely, you are allowed to make changes. Here's a question. If one is all electric, are you off grid? No. So being off grid means you're not tapped into services like the and um, uh, off-grid homestead. I did a conversation series with Zani. So there's a video that kind of explains all of that you should watch. So being off grid means you're not tapped into city services. So you wouldn't be tapped into the grid of services that you're paying for within the city. However, it doesn't mean you're without power. It means you're using other options for powering your home. And again, it could be solar, it could be propane, it could be battery banks. It doesn't mean you're completely in the dark and primitive. It just means you're not paying for those services. You still can have water through a well. You're just not tapped into the city services or the county services. But so all electric means I am on the grid. They can find me if they look in their records because I am tapped into their grid. Where can I go to learn how to build my tiny house? So shameless plug. I do offer workshops that I will forward. My list is getting longer, so I need to write this down because I'm gonna miss this. So let me do all of my plugs. I do offer workshops that talk about building houses, and a series of workshops that take you from beginning to end of building a tiny house. So I do offer that. I'll drop the link in the description of the video. Then I also suggest there are several Wild Abundance. I don't know what side of the country you're on. Wild Abundance is in North Carolina in the Asheville area. They offer kind of hands-on building opportunities. I intend to visit them very soon. Some friends of mine that I've not gotten to visit in person. So there's a hands-on opportunity. Even your local, oh my God, how can I not remember their name? The people that build houses for the less fortunate, the needy. What are their names? I can't think of their names right now, but even taking a class with them and learning the fundamentals of building would be an option. Those skills would be transferable to building a tiny house. You're building on a trailer, but a lot of that, the learning. Oh my God, why can't I think of their names? I know somebody knows who I'm talking about. The the Home Depot and Lowe's, they often offer classes like that as well, to help you in the building process. So those are some options. But again, the workshops I offer, I'll drop that information in the chat. Oh, thank you very much, Sheila. Oh, did Nina? I didn't even see her. Nina made a cameo. Oh, okay. So we're getting ready to start traveling. So I'm in a hotel, a hotel room. You know she likes to make her cameos. I'm surprised she hasn't started barking because I can hear some noise in the hallway. But she's chilling. I took her out for a long walk this morning, so she might be a little worn out. Oh, thank you, Golda. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. My troll today is just doing the most. Um, Habitat. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's Habitat. That's why I love y'all, because somebody's gonna give me my word that I'm missing. Habitat for Humanity. Thank you. Building with them is going to help you build those skills. Thank you, y'all. Y'all knew what I was talking about. Um, All right. It helps so much to have you as a leader on this. It makes it real that brown people can get it done too. It means an individual's desire is not an anomaly. Okay, y'all know I can get emotional. Thank you so much. That is why I'm here, because when I say in the beginning of my intro, I serve up a lot of representation within the movement. Again, at 95 or 97% white, we need to see ourselves, to know this is for us, to know it can be done, to have someone who can share and talk about the challenges that we're going to face, not just challenges for where to place a tiny house, but on top of where to place a tiny house and dealing with racism because some areas aren't safe. Those are the conversations that aren't being had in some of those other spaces, even though I've tried. But those are the conversations that we're going to have here because it is important to our safety and our livelihood. And I thank you so much. And that is why I am doing it. We will be joining the Tiny House community, Tiny House on Wheels community for the long term. Focus now on our 1 to 2 year plan moving forward toward this lifestyle. So thankful to join in showing more representation of our beautiful people. Absolutely. It is absolutely important that you plan for it. That's a lot of what I talk about. Dreaming all the dreams, one of the videos that I've talked about, one of the videos that I produced where I talk about all the things that you have to put in place to get to your dream and the work that has to be done kind of behind the scenes to make it happen. So thank you so much for doing that and sharing that. Troll today is on. Yes, the Cash App has you with the fro. Yes, it is me. So I that was one of my that's when I had my locks, and there was some clip-ins that I used to love to put in because I braid my locks down and had a big fro. Funny story about Nina because Nina is always a character. So I have a wig that I just purchased that I love afros. I just don't have the patience to try to get back there to grow my hair out to an afro. And so I just bought a wig, and I am so off topic right now, but I just bought a wig that I plan to wear. But the most hilarious thing was I was in the bathroom, put on the wig, and then when I came out and I ended up taking a picture of Nina's face because she was looking at me like, I don't know who you are and what just happened and who came out of that bathroom. But it was hilarious. So she's a hater, but I am going to wear that wig. I don't know that I'll wear it here, but I'm sure I'll share some pictures on Instagram. Are there people or is there an organization that will help an individual build her own home? Tiny houses, there are organizations that are building tiny houses for the houseless and for veterans. But building, and when I'm thinking you're saying helping, I'm thinking you're talking from a financial perspective because there are plenty of tiny house builders. So I'm thinking you're speaking from a financial perspective. I don't know of anyone that would help build a tiny house outside of those companies that are building for the houseless and veterans. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Stacy. Thank you for the super chat. I hope people appreciate what you are doing, even if they are not buying a tiny house. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I am thinking of using 1 acre for tiny house parking. How many houses can fit on 1 acre? Lots. That's really up to you. So it's going to be determined by how much space you want to give individuals. Tiny houses don't, and again, depending on the size of a tiny house, they don't require a lot of space. Some people want to have, maybe a front and a backyard. If you consider RV parks and how the RVs are located there, it is really, really up to you. Just designing it. You could even offer varied sizes of lots and charge accordingly. But there is no rule because, again, tiny houses on wheels aren't in the standard of, being regulated by city and county. So it would be, unless you're kind of going through, wait a minute, let me go back. If you're working with the city and going through a process and they're allowing you to put tiny houses on wheels, you'll want to check with them. That's the main answer. If you're kind of doing this on your own, it is going to be up to you and what you decide and how much space you want to give, is the answer. Michelle, going to live in or buy a tiny house. I'm not sure I understand. Oh, I see. This is the rest of your statement that people appreciate. Okay, I got it. Thank you. Thank you so much. Raquel, I think you might be laughing at my Nina story where she was being a hater. I love your decor. What inspired you to choose your color palette? Right now, I've got really my colors, I think, are browns, black, kind of neutral. That is kind of where I exist in the world, of color that I even wear. That's the color that appeals to me. That's the color that just kind of makes me happy. My bedroom is purple because I feel like purple is royalty. The line from the color purple, where and she says she thinks God gets angry if you walk past a field of purple flowers and you don't acknowledge them. I feel like purple is just royalty, and so I wanted my bedroom to be purple. And then red, the red is just the pop. I don't know that I have a true reason for um, the colors that I chose. It was just kind of the colors that speak to me, vibrant. I'm not really a blues type person other than denim. So I guess those were kind of the colors that just kind of speak to me. Um, let's see, what other questions? Have you heard of tiny houses being rented on a weekly basis or even for a couple of days? Just curious. There are absolutely people who are renting their houses on Airbnb. So yes, that would be a weekly basis or um, okay, so now I have somebody else. Man, what is the topic of discussion? Tiny houses. And if you can't get with it, I can kick you out in just a minute. So I'm not sure what your issue is here, but you got just a few more minutes and you can get kicked out. I've got trolls today and I'm not with it. Um, so yes, Airbnb is probably the only option for renting them on a weekly basis or a couple of days. And there are lots of tiny houses on Airbnb. I have a disability, but I want to do some of the work to build my own tiny. Are there people who like to build, or even people who want to build their own homes where we could help each other? That I don't know. I'm thinking if you put it out there, I know, and I'm sharing information about builders. I do know that builders work with disabilities and can build to accommodate. And if you want to be involved in the build, I'm thinking they would allow that to happen as well. But I would say that's one of those things. If you put it out there and ask, I think it would be a need, and you'd find that you'd have a lot of people who would be interested in that. So you've just got to put your information out there and organize it. Like they say, build it and they will come. Um, so yes, I think that is a really good option. Hey, bestie from Facebook, how you doing? Um, Here's a question. Do you think it's so we got just a few more minutes and I'm gonna wrap up. Do you think it's better to buy land to place a tiny home or to rent within the tiny home community? So I'm going to one refer you to where can I my video in maybe episode 3, where can I place a tiny house, to talk about placing a tiny home on land, because if it's a tiny house on wheels, most times they're not going to allow you to place a tiny house on wheels just solely on a piece of property. So you're going to have to work through that and make sure you understand what the rules are in whatever area you're considering. And then whether you are renting within a tiny house community, it's really going to, again, be what is allowed in your area. And then your preferences. If you want to have neighbors, like where I am, I don't have neighbors. But that's fine with me. If you want to be in community and have people surrounding you, those are the kinds of things that I would say you should consider in making your decision. But also, again, where can I place a tiny house? Refer to that video to answer some of those questions to make sure you're considering this the right way. Because of you, I'm looking into cottage style homes, a little bigger than a tiny home, but because of you, I'm excited. Thank you. You are very, very welcome. Thank you for sharing that. I have got to figure out how to get rid of my trolls. Okay. What color? I'm not sure if this is a troll or this is the person who wanted to know what the topic of conversation was. If you get here on time, then you can flow with the topic of conversation. What color suits with all sorts of furniture? Neutrals. Neutrals, your beiges, your blacks, your browns, those are going to go with all sorts of furniture. Have you had to make any, here's a question, have you had to make any major repairs due to your foundation shifting or moving, like cracks, etc.? So again, my tiny house is on a trailer, and so it's not built on a foundation that's going to shift or move. So there are no foundation repairs associated with building on a tiny house trailer. So that is a bonus. How do you organize your closet in your tiny home? So I have a nice size closet, and but over the years I have really learned to, because even in my with having downsized, I realize I still don't wear all of the clothes that I have. So downsizing and continually paying attention to not accumulating too much stuff is really what has helped me organize my closet. And then I, um, I, um, I lost my train of thought because somebody is annoying me in the chat. Um, oh, and I organize my clothes by color. So that is one of the ways that I organize by color. I also put my dresses and my shirts and my jeans all together so I can kind of target in on, the scammers are doing the most. So I can target in on what I'm looking for. That's really how I organize my closet. Let's see. Scammers, they won't. I need to figure out if there's a way to block them, but they won't. Let's see. I love your tiny home. Thank you so much. Hey, Bestie. Thank you. You mentioned before about getting Black farmers as a collective action to rent to tiny home owners. Is that a project in the works? Yes, and it is in all of my videos, links to the information about that. So I do have a list of farmers, owners that are interested in allowing tiny house owners to park on their property. And I make the connection. There's a form you have to fill out depending on your situation, whether you're a property owner or a tiny house owner. And then you can fill out the form, and then I send out emails to connect people together. The one thing I require on that information is that you already be very close to finishing your tiny house, because I have to be mindful of the property owner's time. Like, I can't just send them people who are thinking about it, who want to ask a bunch of questions about their property. It has to be somebody who is close to finishing their build and is looking for a location because they are wrapping up their build. Some people take issue with that. I have shared before that the way the tiny house movement is right now is not for the faint of heart. And so if that concerns you, then you would probably want to look into an established tiny house community so that you can have those conversations with someone that you know that is established. The program that I am working on, the matching, the main focus of those property owners and the farmers are to focus on their business and their livelihoods, and what they're doing for this initiative is a favor. So I can't try to take up all of their time with fielding questions from random people who might build a tiny house or might not build a tiny house. And so that is the reason for the requirement. And I will, that information is in the description of all of the videos. So I will add that information here if you're interested in, um, if you're interested in that information and you want to put and fill out the form. So I will add that information. Did you mention you have a workshop? So yes, I offer their pre-recorded workshops. There is a basic, there's like an intermediate, there's also a placement workshop. So yes, the link to the workshops will be in the description as well. Try putting that. Oh, I need to look into that. Thank you for that idea. Let's see. All right. I don't see any other questions. We are at 101. I think I have answered all of the questions. This was kind of the freestyle. I answered the questions that I knew about and then have answered all of the questions that I have seen in the chat. I thank you all so much for joining again today. I thank you all, as always, for being here. And I am going to close out. I want to share. This is the Tiny House series. This is Creating Home, a Tiny House series. This segment is the What's Your Question? I do this every other week, and I alternate with the conversations on intimate spaces. So next Sunday, we'll be in conversation with a guest who is around in the movement, and they'll be sharing their story and their journey. So I hope you'll join us next Sunday. But this, the What's Your Question? Every Sunday, I offer live content, and I alternate again between the conversations and the What's Your Question? So I hope that if you found this information, you are, and this video helpful, that you are going to like my channel and you are going to share the channel, tell your friends about it, subscribe to the channel, and also subscribe to the notification so that you'll know when live content is happening. I thank you all so much for being here. I wish everyone a very happy Sunday and take care. We'll see you next Sunday. Thank you.